Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Protect Academy's LinkedIn Live event. So, today we have a very special guest. We're going to be discussing governance, risk management, and compliance, and how is it important for you and your organization. So, let's wait for a few moments, let more people join, and then we will start the event. So, hi again, and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And also, thank you so much to everyone who's going to be watching this event later on. And so, as I mentioned, we have a very special guest speaker with us today. We at Protect Academy would like to welcome Mr. Vivek Shah. He is a very skilled industry leader in all things governance, risk management, and compliance. He has nearly a decade's worth of experience in the GRC domain, and he has trained hundreds of professionals in the same. And Mr. Vivek Shah is adept at multiple GRC frameworks as well as functional and technical tools. He is also a certified expert in RSA Archer. And we are very, very honored to announce that Mr. Shah is coming out with a training program with us for functional GRC. It's going to be a completely hands on practical experience for everyone who joins the training program. The course starts on 16th of June, and you absolutely would not want to miss this one because it's going to be very special. As I mentioned, very, very, very hands on. You'll have a lot of exercises and practical aspects and case studies to go through. And so, for further inquiries and further details on this, please feel free to get in touch with Protect Academy. We'd love to help you out. We'd love to set you up and get you started on your hands on GRC journey. And so, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mr. Vivek again. So, please go ahead, take the stage.
Thank you, Ghazal, for that introduction, and welcome everyone to the seminar on what is GRC and its importance. So I'll go ahead and I will start sharing my screen. So I'll just present my screen for a second. Just allow me a second to do
Yes,
the
I'm
same.
here to help Vivek. So, let me know. Yeah. Okay, you got this.
All right, guys. So I believe Ghazal has already introduced, and just to give you an overview, I bring in over 8+ years of experience working as a GRC professional in several GRC tools as well as on GRC functional side. I worked as a risk manager, has pretty much done assessments, ISO assessments. I've worked as an auditor as well, and at the same time, I've implemented tools like RSA Archer in a couple of Fortune 500 companies, and still continuing my journey on the same. Some of the prominent areas that I have a skill set is on data security, cyber risk management, third party risk management, policy management, compliance management, etc. So pretty much in the GRC, my career and journey has been, and still looking forward to continue on the same. So agenda for today is we are going to do an overview on what is GRC, why is it important, how enterprises use GRC to achieve their goals, and we are going to talk about some of the core use cases, what we use in GRC, along with their benefits and advantages, what they bring into, and definitely some of the career opportunities that you can have in a GRC field. Okay, so moving on to what exactly is GRC. GRC, as you all know, stands for governance, risk management, and compliance. Now, most of the businesses are familiar with these terms, but combining the three core pillars of governance, risk management, and compliance, that's where the GRC framework would be set up, right? So mainly GRC is a combination of all three pillars, and that is basically a coordinated model which has been widely used across industry. And definitely, if we look and understand about each of these pillars in detail and the advantage what they would be bringing into an organization, would definitely help organizations to be more and more compliant, be more risk averse, have a good efficiency as far as managing the GRC practices of any organization is concerned. And then gradually we'll look at some of the more advantages as well. But GRC as a framework, if we talk about, is something that is rapidly growing as of today in the technological era, and its importance as well has been increasing a lot, and people have recognized the importance of GRC, especially at the enterprise level, and the benefits they are bringing into the organization a lot. So we'll get inside, each of the pillars on governance, risk management, and compliance. So, beginning with governance, right now, governance is one of the core frameworks that is a part of the GRC pillar, right, or a GRC tirade, if we say. So, setting up any sort of rules, policies, frameworks, laws, regulations that a company uses to achieve its business objectives or its business goals is nothing but governance. So let's assume that we work in a corporate organization, and the corporate organization has certain methodology and certain rules how they envision their visions and strategy over a decade, or maybe over 5 years, or over a year or so, right? So what they would do is they would set up all sorts of policies, all sorts of rules, and they would lay down clear picture of their missions and goal as to how they would like to achieve it. So what do we do is, in the governance segment, we define all such kinds of policies, rules, as well as the frameworks that are necessary for the company to achieve its business success or its goal, is something what main governance is about, or corporate governance is about. So it even defines responsibility of key stakeholders. Okay. So if we look at GRC, that is always a top down approach. So importance of GRC, the values of GRC always has to come from top level management to the bottom level, right? So in an organization, definitely there would be key stakeholders which would have been identified as board of directors and senior management, who would be very good in defining all such kinds of policies for the organization, right? And it is even a very good corporate governance that support a team, including the social responsibility of a policy in their organization planning. So when we plan any sort of corporate governance for a organization, definitely they would focus on various kinds of policy all across a region, or a area, or an industry where they are working into, or where their main businesses are conducted, right? They would even focus on policies related to resources, policies related to people, etc. So some of the examples what we can think of from a governance perspective is ethics and accountability policy. Now we all know how important the ethics and accountability is for any organization, right? So definitely there would be a policy which would be comprising of all sorts of rules and all sorts of regulations, what would have been mentioned in that, and organizations would frame up an ethical and accountable policy for the same. Then we can also expect resource management policies, transparent information sharing policies. Right now, all of the organization should be transparent when it comes to carrying out their business activities, and we all, as we all understand, that such transparent information, once shared with their stakeholders, the employees, the contractors, their business partners, it brings in much more efficiency in carrying out the business, as well as in building trust and ethical culture, right? So if you see some of the examples, right, we would have policies all across. Then if we talk about, we need to have policies around data protection, IT asset management, etc., right? So all across different areas in an organization, we would anticipate policies to be present. So that exactly what governance would stand for in the GRC tirade. Moving on to risk management. Now, risk management again is one of the most crucial aspect of GRC. So what do we anticipate with risk management is any sort of business or industry that we may work in, right? They would have risk based on their finances, from a legal perspective, from a strategic perspective, from an operational perspective, from a technological shift perspective, etc. So risk is any sort of uncertainty that we may identify while conducting out a business, right? So if I were to say that I work in a fintech organization, and then in that fintech organization, the IT assets that I have has a very weak password. Now I determine that the passwords are weak, so it is high probability that I could face a ransomware attack, or my data present in that asset could be used in an unethical manner, and it is highly possible that intruders may get into the system, right? We don't know. So all such kinds of anomalies that we determine are a risk that an organization faces. So in this entire life cycle, what we do is we try to basically identify all such kinds of gaps and anomalies and risks, etc. Then we go ahead, we identify all these types of risk. Then we do a measurement or an assessment on that risk. Okay, that let's assess that if this risk actually turns into an incident, and if that actually happens in the organization, what is going to be impact in such cases, right? Is my organization going to face a huge financial loss, or is it going to be a much reputational impact on the organization? How would that risk pertain and impact the organization is something what we determine. And at the same time, we even determine that how likely it is, right? Is it very likely that, since it's a weak password, and that password of that asset is known to probably thousands of employees in the organization, then how likely is it that people can get unauthorized access to the system, right? So we determine basically the likelihood of a risk happening, we determine the impact of that risk happening, and we basically do like an evaluation of that risk, we evaluate that risk. So based on that evaluation, we will be able to determine that my risk is very high, is it medium, is it low, right? And I do an analysis from all the said aspects about financial, legal, strategical, operational, technological, right, etc. Now, once we determine all the or once we complete all the evaluation process, now is the plan that fine, I know that there is a risk, I have even calculated what could be the impact and how likely this could happen. Now what is the next step? Like, how do I remediate that? How do I mitigate that risk? Like, what exactly is the criteria for mitigation, or what are my steps and plans to mitigate this risk? So what do we do is, in the mitigation plan, we prepare like a plan that what are the mitigation steps, how are we going to reduce this risk, or how are we going to mitigate this risk, if not to a complete full level, but at least up to some extent, that how do we go ahead and try to minimize the risk what is existing, right? So for the same, we can even imply some of the controls that we may already have in the system, right? Or we may prepare a treatment plan, we may change some of the methodologies, we may change some of the processes, we may incorporate more stricter security controls and security measures, right? And ensure that our assets are more safe. For a password, right? I understand that it's a weak password. So my first step would be to bring in such a password that it is very difficult for intruders to, get into it. Correct. So I will have to prepare a plan. I will have to prepare, a proper strategy to mitigate that. And once that is done, I will go ahead and I will try to imply the same. All right. And this is how I would try to remediate or mitigate my risk. And during this entire process, right, the enterprises would like to keep a watch and would like to have a proper reporting for the same, because all such processes are not that easy that it could be resolved in a day, right? It could take weeks, it could take months. So the senior management or the seniors in the organization always expects that let's bring in some kind of dashboard visibility, let's bring in some kind of monitoring criteria, let's bring in some kind of evaluation criteria, that where was the risk before, what happens after implying the risk strategy, how is it now, how have we reduced the impact of risk on the organization, etc. So we mainly use some of the key performance indexes, KPIs, KRIs, evaluation criteria. If organization has some of the specific needs, we keep it in a very communicative way to the analyst, to the senior management, so that everybody is in sync about what is going on with a particular risk. The necessary stakeholders are in a communication and they have a proper channel to understand what is happening with all of these risks and how are we trying to remediate it, and how things are going from a monitoring aspect, right? So if you look at holistically all of the stages of this life cycle, this we can say this, that this is an integrated risk management for an organization. That I'm trying to cover up risk management from all the areas in an organization, right? And I'm trying to create a holistic risk management uh, framework in the organization to protect it from several ways. So companies use enterprise risk management program a lot, and the potential problems arising out of it, which will help them to determine it and minimize their business losses, as well as achieve the business objectives what organization is working on. So similarly, moving on to the compliance part now, we have a very crucial act on compliances, and it's one of the core pillars of the GRC framework. Now definitely we do understand that we have got all the rules, we have got all the laws, we have got all the regulations, we've got the processes, right? That's all what we saw, that what is governance in that aspect. But I need to ensure that all such rules, laws, regulations, policies are being followed correctly as well. Because if that is not being followed correctly, I can easily say that I'm not compliant to all of those norms, and I could be levied with huge penalties, and I will have to bear so many consequences out of that. So organization would be more and more interested of how compliance is going to work for them. So compliance is all about adhering to the laws, the processes, the policies what organization has designed, and even to some of the external compliance act. If you may be doing some sort of business with Europe, right? You may have to follow the GDPR compliance act, right? GDPR is one of the core compliance act when dealing with trade businesses or with any other sort of business nature where there is an exchange of data, where there is exchange of personal information. You have to be compliant with respective GDPR norms. So definitely we have external compliance norms. Like if we talk about Indian region, we would have to comply with GST norms, income tax norms, FMCG norms if you are into an FMCG industry, right? So depending on the industry and depending on the business model that you are working with, right, you will have to follow different types of external regulatory compliance, definitely from a government perspective or from a state perspective, and likewise internal compliance, what organizations have designed for themselves to carry out a smooth business activity, right? They would have created some of the compliance norms on data management, IT, asset protection, ethics and compliance, right? Data transparency, and a bunch of um, other areas which we could think of from a compliance perspective. So with that said, compliance is all about adhering the norms and the policies what we have, and holistically combining all three of them, we frame up the GRC tirade. Now, quickly moving on to importance of GRC, right? Now, to understand how GRC is important for an organization. Now GRC is an area which would help an organization on data driven decision making, because let's assume that we have a GRC tool, right? We have a GRC tool which is capable to incorporate entire integrated risk management for an organization, right? So the data from all different kinds of risk that I would be having, right, that would be incorporated in a tool. And with that data in the tool, I will be able to create certain reports. I'll be able to play around with the data. I'll be able to apply some filters on the data. I'll be able to carry out some statistical calculations, which will help me to determine risk analysis in a much better and efficient way, because I'm talking with statistics and facts. Correct. So definitely with a good GRC system in place, with good GRC maturity model, I would definitely have a very good data driven decision making for the organization. GRC would even promote responsible operations. Within GRC, we can definitely have a good operational feature live, which would help the organization understand some of the common cultures and ethical values for promoting a healthy environment for growth and a very transparent and ethical environment, as we were talking about some of the ethical and accountability and transparency policies, right? So it is very evident now when you work on a GRC software or on a tool, right? It gives you a very good understanding about how exactly things are going on in any of the core GRC use cases, because you have the data with you. You have all sorts of visibilities that you need, right? So that data and that visibility will speak more than any other work being done in silos or work being done over an email and phone call and manual interaction, etc., right? So it will definitely give you a very healthy and transparent nature of operations, because in GRC all these operational activities can be easily tracked and we can have an audit trail as well, right? So that will certainly be helpful. Improved security, definitely with an integrated GRC approach, business can employ more crucial and secured data security measures to protect consumer data's, business data's, employee data, contractors data, right? And implementing a core GRC strategy is essential for organization, because we all know how crucial data these days have been, specifically with the technological and financial frauds that has been happening around. So definitely I would have more improved security measures, because I can definitely have a good layer of access controls and roles mentioned in the GRC model. So with those access controls and necessary roles, I'd be able to restrict my data according to how a user should have accessibility on it. So that would definitely help me secure data in a more efficient and in a better way, and that would definitely help me improve my security. Now, when I talk about the other aspect, right? Um, let's say when you have an integrated GRC. So people working in risk would like to refer some of the compliance act or some of the policies, right? Now, when you work on an integrated risk management platform, it is very much possible that everybody would have a centralized repository, and risk people would have access to policies, risk people would have access to some of the controls and compliances, etc., what they may be looking for. They won't have to search here and there and spend hours and hours gathering that data. And likewise, people from controls may need access to policies or may need access to some of the audit work or so. So the thing here is that with one common GRC platform or with one good GRC model, we would have right set of information for right people. So that will pretty much help me to basically get an understanding about how things are accessible to different stakeholders at the right time. And that will definitely help me in more uh, agile decision making, a collective approach. I would easily be able to put uncertainty to an extent that people don't have to be extremely uncertain with the data, with the controls, with actions what they are looking for. And when we have achieved all these, definitely that improves the senior management confidence, because data would speak automatically, and the GRC framework what we have established would speak more on this. Correct. So I'll be able to achieve all of these definitely with the right GRC model, and definitely I would be getting more return on investment for this, because I would have everything on one common platform, right? So it would definitely increase efficiencies of the employees. At the same time, it would even increase operational efficiency of the organization as well. So we would be able to save a lot of time and money by removing activities that don't add any value, because when you work on a common platform, you do get an approach and idea about which activities are important, which activities are non-important, where we need to spend the most time on, right? If there is any sort of duplication or not. Correct. Because when you have, let's say, a list of policies with you, right, now you may be thinking of a portion of a policy, right, a section of a policy, and you feel that there is not such policy existing in the organization, so let's try to create a new policy and let's request for a new policy. But when you have the list of policies available with you, which should be made available to all the employees and contractors, now when you visit those policies or when you have access to that policy, you may be able to identify that, okay, what information I'm looking for is already present in that policy. I don't need to request for anything new. Correct. Similarly, that could happen with so many issues that you may be facing, like, or if we talk about issues management use case, people would have already created such kinds of issues for different assets or for different processes. All you have to do is look within the platform and identify a similar kind of issue and try to imply the same when you face such kinds of problems. Right. So we would definitely have efficient information collection, duplicity, right? Reduction in duplicity or no duplicity, more detailed and productive reporting, and definitely teams are able to repeat this process more consistently because we have the right set of information available on a common platform. So it is very important for us to set up a good GRC model or good GRC capabilities in the organization to achieve all of these. And these are all the importance and these are all the advantages that you would see by incorporating a good GRC model and a framework for the organization. All right. Now let's understand how enterprises use GRC to achieve their goals. Okay. Now, if I look at GRC from a capability perspective, we have to align with this, or we have to rather follow this four core principles: learn, align, perform, and review. Right? Understand the context of the organization, understand the culture of the organization, understand the stakeholders, which are going to be the primary ones for the GRC model to be successful, right? Understand their expectation, understand the culture of the organization and the stakeholders, which will give me a very good base and a background to set up my GRC maturity model. And GRC is such a tirade that I cannot mature it overnight, right? It goes over the years, right? It's not that GRC practices could be incorporated within a very short duration. I have to understand things from scratch, right? Like I said, we have to learn about context of the organization, its culture, its stakeholders, right? Once we understand all these, then we define the direction, the objectives, we identify the scope of improvement, we assess those scopes, we design the GRC modules, we understand how efficiently this could be incorporated, etc. So first we have to understand this, then we have to align with all the objectives and goals of the organization, understand the capability of the organization, that is my organization capable to handle all such shifts, all such technical change, all such functional change, right? Incorporate all these. What would I need in order to incorporate this, right? You have to do all these assessment from this phase. Once you have an agreement on this, then you work on, its performance, that how my controls, what I have in the GRC framework, are actually helpful to mitigate the risk, how my policies have been effective to the employees in understanding what my organization wishes to do, what my organization has present in form of rules and in form of regulations, laws, etc. Correct. So what do I do is I definitely try to work on performance evaluation. I understand policies, I understand controls, I understand what sort of trainings is needed, I understand how is the communication flow that is going on within the organization. How do I ensure that I make my GRC more effective, more reachable to employees, more understandable to the employees? What sort of new methods that I'll have to bring into place for making people understand its importance, by maybe giving them a good amount of training, maybe by offering them some sort of incentives on training completion, by giving them seminars, webinars, right? Sending them regular notifications on trainings, etc. I basically go ahead and evaluate all of these parameters to have a more matured and an effective GRC model. And then likewise, I will go ahead and I'll review, how my assessments, how my performance has been doing, which are the areas of improvement that I can focus on, how am I monitoring this, and what do we assure out of this? Like, what is the conclusion by adopting some of the business objectives, by doing the assessments? How do we ensure that improvements happen? How do we ensure the right set of monitoring is happening? And how do we go ahead and take its feedback and try to make a GRC model more and more mature? So this is some of the core principles on which GRC would work on in any organization, right? Learn, align, perform, and review. So this is what the holistic capability model of a GRC looks like. Now let's even talk about how would organizations implement an effective GRC strategy. Correct. Now we have understood its importance. We have understood the principles as well. We know, you know, how important GRC it is. We are working on assessments. We are working on design. We are working on the goals. Right. We have gathered all such information. But at the end of the day, we look more for an implementation perspective, that how do we effectively imply a good GRC system or a good GRC tirade in an organization. Correct. So definitely setting up clear goals, right? We have to set up very clear goals in an organization, that what are we trying to achieve with this GRC model. Okay, we might want to address that. If we don't have a good GRC model, then how would non-compliance result in? How would loss of data result in? How would loss of assets, or non-security or unauthorized excess of assets would result into? What happens if I don't do a correct enterprise or an operational level risk management? What is going to be the impact on it? Right. So I basically define very clear goals, that with incorporating a GRC model, we want to be risk have good amount of risk management, right? Be more and more risk free, have a good level of compliance achieved, have good level of audits available, have good level of accessibility to the data and to the GRC systems, right? These are my goals at the end of the day. And these goals will help me conduct my business more effective, increase transparency, increase trustworthiness, increase fairness and ethical behavior. And of course, by achieving all these, I'm going to bring in more and more customers and trust for the business. Correct. So I'll define all of these clear goals. At the same time, I would access existing procedures, whatever is existing in my organization as far as GRC is concerned. Right. I would try to access it, and I would try to choose that how I can mature this. Like, what are my core ways of maturing the existing procedures that we have. Correct. Because I have to understand it. There would be no organization where there wouldn't be a GRC, right? Every organization would have it. But the challenge is how they have implied GRC, how they are using it, and what do they envision to make it more and more mature is something that matters the most. So accessing the existing procedures is one of the very crucial aspects in uh, implementing an effective GRC strategy, right? And then, as I said earlier, that we have to start it from the top. The most important role would be of the senior management to understand its importance and imply this GRC from top level to the bottom level. So it will always going to be a top down approach, right? And we must understand the benefits of implementing GRC for policies, how it would help them make informed decision, how it would build a risk averse culture, right? So top leaders will have to firstly understand the importance of GRC, because there is no point that if the top level is not aligned and it's not synchronized with GRC, then there is no point of bringing in GRC as well, correct? And if we don't do that, sooner the organizations would understand its importance and they would literally see the difference before having a good GRC model versus after having a good GRC model, definitely in their business, in their revenues, in more clientele attraction, etc. So that is again very very good aspect of starting from the top. And then these days, there has been immense use of GRC softwares around day-to-day business activities, because nobody would want to manage everything in simple Excel sheets and over an email or so. People would definitely prefer more and more GRC automation, and would prefer more and more, softwares of maintaining all the GRC activities that an organization does. So having efficient GRC softwares and solutions handy would definitely help the organization um, be more aligned towards risk management, be more compliant, and at the same time, it is even going to help me facilitate um, some amount of automation on the existing manual processes. Because what we do is in the software, right? You have been assigned different roles and you have been assigned different activities what a user has to do, right? So all different users working in different areas of GRC would have different roles and different activities to do on a platform, but with such a way that it is very highly visible to the organization, even up to senior management, right? So let's take an example that the dashboard functionality of any GRC tool plays a major role. Just by looking at the dashboard, I'll be able to understand that how many policies needs a review, for how many policies the review is approaching, or for how many policies the review hasn't been conducted though the due date has passed. How many risks are categorized as extremely high risk, right? How many risks are categorized as low risk? Okay, how many risks have been mitigated from high to medium, right? So all such dashboards play an important role, giving organization a very good view and a very quick view about what is going on as far as risks are concerned, as far as policies are concerned, etc., which will help them make informed decisions. So that's where tools and softwares get into picture a lot for organization, which will help them manage their GRC model in a much effective and efficient ways. All right. Um, the next what we have to take into consideration is the core use cases that we do in GRC, that or that we have in GRC, and some of the advantages those use cases would bring to. Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's understand how core GRC use cases would actually help the organizations, as well as what are some of the core GRC use cases, right? So beginning with issues management. Now, issues is one of the very important and core use cases what we have in GRC, right? Now, let's think what is an issue, right? Now, let's say I'm working on an asset, and within that asset, I identify that few of my functionalities are not working as it should. So what I will do is I will create an issue that in my GRC software, reporting functionality is not working. Now, that is an issue which I have identified, correct? So what I will do is I will report that issue, and definitely different teams in the organization who manages this software, the technical team who is responsible for ensuring that the technical capabilities are good, and technical ability of the software is such that they are able to help out the people on that. So the mainly the stakeholders on that, so that technical team will go ahead and will work on the issues, and will definitely go ahead and they would work on an remediating that issue, that how this could be remediated, what are the steps they have taken, and how to get back those functionalities as early as possible, right? So that is how issue management would work. And if we feel that okay, this functionality is something that has been damaged to a greater extent and it's not possible to fix it very immediately, I may create an exception as well. What is an exception? That I'm accepting this as an issue, that this issue is known and I'm accepting that issue. And having accepted that issue, okay, it will go ahead and it will basically give an understanding to the stakeholders that the reason why this cannot be corrected or this cannot be remediated immediately is so and so. So what I'm doing is I'm basically accepting the issues, and based on that I will maybe create a future plan of how to remediate that. But as an immediate action or as an immediate possibility to remediate that is not possible. Okay, so this is what my issues management would mainly be talking about. And all of you are attending this session, right? This is mainly what we are going to talk in our session, that what exactly are issues, who are the core stakeholders involved in the issue, how do they perform their day-to-day activity, right? How would they approach of creating an issue, who can be an issue owner, who can be an issue creator, why would we need remediation plan, what does a remediation plan look like, what are some of the core details that one has to fill in a remediation plan, how do we categorize remediation plans as, you know high priority, low priority, medium priority, how do we define types of issues, because not all types of issues would be the same, right? So we are going to understand end to end of issue management pretty much in depth, uh, keeping in mind its life cycle, its stakeholders, its functional design, with real time industry examples, right? So it's not just going to be, theories about issues and remediations. We would even be taking live examples of how in the industry people create the issue, how stakeholders work on that issue, how do they remediate that issue, how do they even create exception requests, and how do they follow an end-to-end process for the same. And likewise, we would even be working on different use cases, as you all can see here, on policy management. So how is policy design? What are some of the core components that we include in a policy? What is scope of a policy? What are the core stakeholders involved in a policy? Who is a policy owner? Who is a policy reviewer? What roles they have to play in designing a policy? What sort of approvals one needs to, make a policy live? What sort of information would be included in the policy? How about the review and the life cycle of an end-to-end policy? How do we categorize policy as, confidential, non-confidential, private, public? What are the factors that are important in defining such policies, right? How do we prepare a master list of all the policies and how do we maintain that, right? Basically, keeping in mind the entire policy management life cycle, how an enterprise organization would operate, we would be talking about. Similarly, controls risk, right? Some of the most widely used cases in GRC, right? We all know that there are so many different kinds of risk, from an operations perspective, from an enterprise perspective, from a third party perspective, from an asset management perspective, and whatnot, right? So we understand the core of risk management here, right? From what is risk register, how is the risk life cycle created, what are core stakeholders involved in the risk process. We understand some of the core definitions of what is inherent risk, what is residual risk, what is risk tolerance, what is risk capacity, how would organization manage entire risk management, how would I conduct an end-to-end risk assessment for an IT asset, for an enterprise organization, right? How would a risk treatment plan look like? Who would be the one who would be analyzing this risk? How do they analyze this risk? How do they give you the scoring? How is the scoring matrix created? What are some of the core principles of CIA that a risk manager or analyst would follow and be compliant with? Correct. We would be talking pretty much in depth about the risk management in this course. Similarly, on controls as well, that how are controls designed, right? We are not just going to focus on that, okay, these are the list of controls and directly implied. We firstly work on the designing of controls, that how are these controls designed, that why do we need these controls in place, what advantages they would be bringing in, right? Some of the core stakeholders involved in controls, who are control owners, who are control testers, who are compliance specialists, what benefits a control would bring in if it is being applied, correct? What is the effectiveness of the controls? What are control effectiveness, right? We talk about control standards in depth, that core control standards from different areas of, let's say, access management. How would that be designed? Then we would move to master controls, that how would that access management would be subdivided into multiple areas, that access management for, let's say, IT assets, access management for, let's say, web folders, or network drives or network shares, right? And then within IT asset, how would access management strictly work for some of the processes or some of the tools like active directories, or IT assets or systems or so. So in pretty much right from designing a control up until how it is implemented, along with it, how do we test the controls as well? Because for controls, it is not that once a control is designed. No, we have to ensure that we are testing this control regularly as well. So how does the testing of control take place? Who are the responsible stakeholders for doing the testing on the control? What is the life cycle of control testing, and how do we ensure that this testing is happening at an effective stage, and ensuring that the controls what we have are literally effective in the organization and as being useful? Okay, so we would be working on that entire life cycle along with all the real time examples that we much need here. Similarly, we would be talking on compliance management as well, how important compliance it is. We would even be taking into consideration some of the core aspects of GDPR for compliance, that as a matured compliance framework, what does GDPR suggest when you work with a European Union? How an organization ensures that the necessity what has been mentioned in a GDPR framework, an organization should be compliant with, correct? So I have to definitely ensure that how my compliance management use case is designed, who will be the core stakeholders who would be working on this compliance, how do we bring in such checklist, how do we decode this checklist and ensure that my organization is compliant with all these, how do I measure my effectiveness, or how do I ensure that the compliance what GDPR is suggesting, my compliance act and my compliance assessments what all I have done is in accordance with the frameworks that I'm following, correct? I will bring in different business processes, I'll bring in different uh, 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 you know frameworks what I have, right? And I'll try to ensure that the compliance management is managed and maintained in an end to end way. All right. And then lastly, we also have business continuity. Uh, Business continuity being prime during crisis management, disaster recovery. Let's say we have some kind of natural calamity, hurricane, earthquake, some sort of natural disaster, and during such time, we have no control over business, right? How do we carry out business activities during such events, such time? What is the entire BCDR planning? Correct, how do we manage our systems, how do we manage the data, how do we effectively conduct our business during such events, and at the same time ensure how all of my business is safe during such events, correct? What is my backup plan, how do I take necessary backup and ensure that the business continuity is happening in case of any sort of failures, or in case of any sort of um, event where I'm not able to carry out my day-to-day activities, right? So these are some of the core use cases, guys, what we have as far as GRC is concerned, and definitely there are much more. But if I talk about the core use cases, then I can certainly say these are some of the core use cases that we have in GRC, right? And then lastly, talking about the career path, um, people who are new to this GRC world, definitely this course is designed for it. We cover up right from a beginner level to intermediate or expert level of knowledge on these use cases and on GRC, right? So we do not have any kind of prerequisites for this course. If even if you are fresher, even if you don't have a background on GRC, right, it is equivalently a good course for you to understand how actually GRC works, what is GRC, what are the core use cases, how enterprise organizations are using it, and what values you can bring in as a GRC consultant, right? And at the same time, people who are working on the tech side of GRC, for you to understand the functionalities of GRC, this course is very, very useful in such aspects and giving you a techno functional skill set on the GRC side. All right. And people who are already working on GRC, looking forward to have their knowledge enhanced on these use cases, can even join our course on the GRC functional side. And if I talk about the career opportunities, see, career opportunities are wide open in the market for compliance officers, for risk advisory consultants, people who are looking to get technically skilled on GRC as well. We have some of the widely used tools like RSA Archer, ServiceNow, right? And you see ample of opportunities around the technical aspect as well. You can have a great career in auditing if you are mainly looking to be like auditors. You can even be a compliance analyst if you are looking to have a career in the compliance side of GRC. So GRC has wide scope of opportunities open, and pretty much you can tap Fortune 500 companies, you can tap Indian IT services companies, you can tap a couple of US based services. If you're from a Middle Eastern region is using GRC and they have huge caliber around GRC side, so you can tap companies from those region as well. So this is a very upcoming and a booming segment in cybersecurity, which is definitely something to envision and foresee in future. So we would have wide range of openings and roles in GRC. Okay. And this course will definitely give you a very good understanding about GRC holistically. And then you will be able to decide that no, I want to move on a technical side of GRC, or I want to move on a specific functional role in GRC, etc. Correct. And even with this course, you can start your career as a fresher, as a junior GRC consultant, because you have a very good understanding on the fundamentals and the core use cases of GRC. Right. So with this, I would like to conclude the session for now. If there is any questions, any discussions you guys may have, I'll be open for the same.
Hi, Vivek. Thank you so much for the wonderful session. Yes, we have a lot of questions in the comment section. So if you want, you can, yeah, you can remove the screen. Yeah, wait. Okay. So I'll just
Sure.
put them on the screen, okay? So first question is by Gotham. Can you see the question on the screen?
Yes, I can see that question. Yeah, what is basic difference between finding and a risk? See, finding is also known as an issue. And I'll tell you from what we were talking about right now. Let's say you're working on an asset, and the example what we took about a report, that reporting functionality is not working. Now you identified that reporting functionality is not working is an issue, but with that said, if that reporting functionality is not working, what is going to be the consequence? That will I not be able to extract report? If I'm not able to extract report, will my operational efficiency be deteriorated? Will I not be able to submit, proper data to the management? If you are not able to do that, and the consequences of that functionality not working is a risk. But identifying that this functionality is not working is an issue. I hope you got that basic difference between a finding and a risk.
Yeah, our next question is by Stephen Anthony. And Gotham, you can leave your comment, you can leave your revert in the comment section if you'd like Vivek to elaborate more on the same. Yeah, Vivek, so you can take on the next question.
Sure. To move into GRC, what is the prerequisite? See, to move into GRC at such, there is no a defined list of prerequisite I would suggest. You can begin your GRC journey by basic understanding and getting an idea about what exactly is GRC, right? And then you can get into a deep dive knowledge and skill set of how GRC works in an organization. What is GRC? How do you imply GRC, right? So if you take up our course, this is exactly why we have designed our course as well. This course covers up right from the basic of getting into a GRC, right? Explaining what is GRC and all the way up until how GRC functions in an enterprise organization. So if you are looking to, build your career in GRC, then definitely this course is a must. And then definitely once you decide upon an expertise or a domain of your choice, that whether you want to move ahead on the compliance side, or you want to move ahead on audit side, or you want to move ahead on the technical side of GRC, definitely then you will have to do some of the technical courses, some of the functional courses widely available in the industry. Okay, so that is what I would say from a prerequisite perspective. Next question, Lakshmi, can you mention some of the available GRC tools? Yep, some of the widely used GRC tools are RSA Archer, ServiceNow GRC, IBM Open Pages, OneTrust GRC, right? These are all legacy GRC tools, which you will see majority of the big scale enterprises are using to manage their GRC activities. Now, these GRC activities are, I mean, these GRC tools are such that they are at a such a maturity level that you will only see them major big scale organizations using it. If you talk about small scale organization or MSME industry where the count of employee strength is not that high, then probably I would say that ServiceNow GRC or Archer GRC is not the right set of tools for them. So firstly, we have to think on the enterprise industry that we are tapping into, the audience that we are trying to tap into, and the amount of work what an organization is expecting from GRC. These are some of the core criteria that I should be looking into, using or selecting a GRC tool. But yeah, as far as industry is concerned, as I mentioned, Archer, ServiceNow, OneTrust, IBM Open Pages are some of the tools what people use for GRC.
Right. So I think Jagadish also has a similar question. So you've answered it. Right.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And I think when you were discussing issues management, Vijay had a query between issues or incident. So were you talking about incident management or issues management? And if there is a distinction?
Sure, sure. Again, let me take a very simple example and let's differentiate what is an issue and what is an incident, right? Now, let's take issues, risk, and incident. Okay, that would be a better example for understanding. So let's get back to the reporting functionality example, what I was explaining. Now, a stakeholder identifies that reporting functionality is not working, correct? Now, he has reported basically that as an issue, correct? That reporting functionality is literally not working in the system. Okay, now I can take that as an issue. But if I see that a series of reporting functionalities, like a subdivision of reporting, that reporting functionality may not be able to extract a report, or reporting functionality may not be such that it is, not allowing the stakeholder to download something, right? Again, the reporting functionality is not working is an issue. But in reality, even after trying several attempts, or in reality even after trying some of the measures, it is still not working, I would like to say that this is an incident now. That I try to remediate it, I try to incorporate some of the method, right? Then definitely this is an incident. And not only for one stakeholder, I will even try to analyze that this functionality is not working for multiple stakeholders, for system administrators as well, right? So when such kind of validation happens, I can say that this basically is an incident. Okay, So incident, I would say that's a broader term of an issue itself. Okay, issues is at a scale that I identify some gap, I identify some functionality not working, or I see a foresee risk which is coming. Correct. I would try to have basically more than an issue. But when I see things happening into reality, I would try to tag that as an incident. Okay. So let's say I know that my passwords are weak in the organization. Correct. Now that is a risk. The risk is that passwords are weak and my passwords could get you know intruders into it, and they can access the data, they can access my crucial information, etc. And that's a huge risk to the organization. But in reality that has not happened. Now in reality, if intruders actually get into the system and have a data spoofing or have a data theft, right, then that I can say that okay, this is an incident now. All right, I hope now you got a clear difference between this.
Right. So I think Vijay will be able to leave a comment and let us know. That was a really nice explanation. Thanks so much. And so we have some more questions, like a couple more. So Lakshmi would like to know if you'll share the presentation slides post the session.
Sure, Lakshmi. If you, I mean, if anybody who is looking for to have it, feel free to, drop an email, and then Ghazal would be able to share the same slides with all of you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Gotham again had a question.
Uh, no, Gautam, we are not covering up GRC tools directly here, right? We won't be covering up from a tool perspective, but definitely we will do an overview of a tool, right? That how these use cases are being used in a tool, we would certainly be doing it. But mainly in this course, we would be learning about core of these use cases, right? That functionality, its features, stakeholders involved, its life cycle, right? Real time examples. That is the primary agenda for this course. We won't be learning any specific tool in this course, Gautam.
And I also had a question, so I'll just post it on the screen.
Sure. Definitely. What are common challenges organization face when implementing a GRC program, and how can those be overcome? Very good question. See, as an organization, as I said, it always has to be a top down approach. So the very first and basic thing is people need to understand what is GRC and its importance, right? Once that is very clear to the senior management of the organization, then it would be the next step that they would think to have like a GRC tool or a proper GRC program, or a level of maturity. When you go from level 0 to level 5, that's when they will understand the sense. So the very first and primary thing what an organization has to understand is the importance of GRC and what is GRC. Now, once that
Right.
picture is clear, then the roadmap becomes very smooth. But the most common challenge is making people understand what is GRC and why is it important, and why should they focus more and more on GRC. So that is one of the very common challenge. After that, the question comes is, okay, everything is understood. You have understood what is GRC. You have understood, uh, you know, what
The
is the
importance
roadmap
of it.
to it.
Right, right.
Then comes the implementation part, right? Now when you talk about GRC implementation, it's not just going to be with a single stakeholder. It is going to be several stakeholders from different use cases in GRC that will have to be coordinated, as well as they have to be aligned, keeping in mind where GRC is going to get implemented. So first second step is I'll have to go ahead and I'll have to decide upon that, do I need a small scale GRC tool to just manage few of the use cases, or if I'm talking about enterprise organization, I will have to go ahead and understand that what level of data I'm talking about. That if I'm talking about hundreds and thousands of data, then we would any day go with a legacy tool. Now within that legacy tool, we'll have to go ahead and understand that, is the organization capable to manage this legacy tool? If not, what are the steps organization will have to think on, that how are they going to manage it. Second thing, whatever their existing data is that data synchronized, is that data aligned? If not, let's work on data collection, let's work on ensuring that data is stored in the correct format, in the correct way, which can be migrated to a tool. Third thing, users will have to prepare a functional design that, okay, they should be able to tell us that how a risk management should work. They have to give a functional design of it. Are they able to provide the right set of functional design to it? If yes, then it would be the other discussion, that how this would be incorporated in the tool, right? So as we progress through it, every step there is a challenge. So right from understanding its importance all the way till implementing the GRC, you have to think on data, you have to think on migration, you have to think on security, you have to think on the budgeting, you have to think on what is the right tool to be selected, you have to think on how your organization is skilled enough to utilize all of these as well. Because if you give them very fancy stuff and your organization is not comfortable with it, then there is no point of spending hundreds and thousands of dollars on GRC technologies and tools. So all these, I would say, are some of the very common challenges what organizations face. And then um, the only answer to it is more and more training, education, awareness, and knowledge on all of these to overcome all of these challenges.
Right, right. So this sounds like a collaborative effort by the entire organization, not just a single person trying to implement the laws and all of that.
Absolutely, absolutely,
All right, thanks so much for explaining. I have a better picture in my head now.
no problem. You're welcome,
Yeah. So
and thank you,
let's.
everybody.
Yeah,
Uh,
I
I
was
hope
just
I was
about to
able
say.
to answer all the questions you have, right? And I hope things are clear.
Yes, absolutely. So you've answered every single question, and everybody's happy with the answers as well. So that's great. If there aren't any more questions, then we can wrap up the session. Yeah, so I do not see any more questions. So I think we can wrap this up. Thank you so much, Vivek, for taking out the time. I know you're very busy. So thanks so much for joining us and for explaining everything so wonderfully. And really looking forward to the training course that is coming up soon. And if anybody has any queries regarding the same, please do not hesitate in reaching out to me or Protect Academy, and we'd be really glad to get you started. And I'm sure nobody would want to miss out on Vivek's mentorship. He's truly awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Vivek, and thanks so much everybody for taking out the time in your busy day as well and joining us for this event. Thanks for the questions, and we will see you in the next one.
Thank you, everyone, for joining in your time as well. Really nice talking to each one of you. Thank you all.